I've decided to start a new life without you." The words hung in the air of the upscale restaurant, where we'd gathered to celebrate my daughter's college graduation. Gregory, my husband of 28 years, stood with his champagne glass still raised, his announcement displacing the toast he was supposed to be making to Amelia's achievements. The clinking of silverware ceased. Conversations halted mid-sentence. 50 pairs of eyes darted between Gregory and me, waiting for my reaction. For the tears, the shouting, the dramatic exit everyone expected. Instead, I smiled. "Congratulations on your honesty," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. "My name is Bianca Caldwell. I am 54 years old, and until this moment, I had been playing the role of the devoted wife and mother perfectly, perhaps too perfectly. I had put my own career aspirations on hold to support Gregory through 3 business ventures, 2 career changes, and countless finding himself phases that seemed to stretch longer with each passing year. I raised our brilliant daughter, Amelia, who sat beside me now, her graduation cap still perched on her head, her expression frozen in horror as she tried to process what her father had just announced. From the corner of my eye, I could see Cassandra Wells, Gregory's much younger girlfriend, shifting uncomfortably at the back table where she sat with people I had considered friends for decades. The same friends who apparently knew about the affair, but never thought to tell me. The same Cassandra who had attended our Christmas parties, who had once called me for advice about her career, seeking the wisdom of an older woman she respected. The irony wasn't lost on me. With practiced calm, I reached into my handbag and pulled out a sealed cream-colored envelope. I had prepared it weeks ago, knowing this moment would come, though I hadn't anticipated the public venue. I placed it gently beside Gregory's plate, my hand remarkably steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "What's this?" he asked, his triumphant expression faltering for the first time since he'd stood to make his announcement. "Something for you to read later," I replied, keeping my voice steady and pleasant, as if we were discussing dinner plans rather than the end of our marriage. I turned to Amelia, whose face had gone pale, her eyes wide with shock and confusion. I kissed her cheek, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume, the one I'd helped her choose for job interviews. "I am so proud of you, sweetheart. This day is still about your accomplishment. Nothing changes that." Then I stood, smoothed my dress, a navy blue sheath I'd purchased specifically for this occasion, and addressed our stunned guests with the same composure I'd maintained through decades of dinner parties and social obligations. "Please enjoy your meal. I wish you all a lovely afternoon." With that, I walked out of the restaurant, my head held high, feeling 50 pairs of eyes following my every step. The heavy door swung shut behind me, cutting off the beginning of anxious murmurs and shocked whispers that would undoubtedly fuel gossip for weeks to come. Outside, the Augusta summer heat hit me like a wall, the humidity instantly making my skin feel damp. But I welcomed it. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, I could breathe freely. The weight I'd been carrying, pretending everything was fine while watching my marriage crumble from the inside, had finally been lifted. Behind me, I heard the restaurant door open and slam shut with force, followed by Gregory's voice, no longer confident and controlled, but high-pitched and frantic. "Bianca, what the hell is this? What have you done?" I kept walking toward my car, allowing myself a small smile that no one could see. The envelope I'd handed him contained the beginning of my revenge, one I'd been meticulously planning for months, ever since I'd first discovered his betrayal. Every detail had been carefully orchestrated, every contingency planned for. I had always been the practical one in our marriage, after all. While Gregory dreamed big and took risks, often reckless ones that I had to mitigate, I maintained the stability our family needed. I was the one who saved diligently for Amelia's education, when Gregory invested unwisely in his friend's restaurant venture that folded within a year. I was the one who worked extra hours as a finance manager at Trivanta Corporation when his midlife crisis led him to quit his stable position to follow his passion, selling handcrafted furniture. A passion that lasted approximately 6 months before he grew bored and restless, moving on to the next thing that caught his interest. My own dreams of opening a financial consultancy for women, helping them navigate the complex world of money management and investment, were perpetually on hold. After Amelia graduates, I told myself repeatedly. After Gregory finds stability. The goalposts kept moving, and I kept waiting, always putting others first. 3 months ago, I noticed discrepancies in our joint accounts. Small transfers to an account I didn't recognize, carefully timed to coincide with my busiest work periods when I was less likely to review our finances closely. Having spent 20 years managing our family finances with precision and care, these irregularities stood out like red flags waving in my face. I could have confronted Gregory immediately, demanded explanations, created the scene he probably expected, but something held me back. Perhaps it was intuition honed over nearly 3 decades of marriage. Or perhaps it was the growing distance between us over the past year, the way he'd become increasingly distracted, always on his phone, staying late at the office more frequently, the small lies that didn't quite add up. Instead of confronting him, I began quietly investigating. I approached it the way I would any financial analysis at work, methodically, thoroughly, emotionally detached. What I discovered was worse than I had imagined, more calculated and deliberate than a simple affair. Gregory had been systematically moving funds to a separate account for over a year, thousands of dollars siphoned away, while he told me we needed to cut back on expenses. That retirement was approaching and we should be conservative. He had been taking Cassandra to expensive restaurants I'd never heard of, purchasing jewelry that never appeared on my fingers, and looking at beachfront property in exclusive developments, all while telling me we couldn't afford the kitchen renovation I'd been requesting for years. Then came the text messages I discovered when Gregory left his phone unlocked one Sunday morning. He'd been in the shower, and his phone buzzed repeatedly on the nightstand. I picked it up, initially intending to silence it, but the preview of the message stopped me cold. Messages about their new life together. Messages about how he was finally breaking free from obligation and expectation. Messages about their detailed plans for the day after Amelia's graduation, the specific day he had chosen to make his grand exit from our marriage. What Gregory had forgotten, or perhaps never fully grasped despite being married to me for 28 years, was that I had been a financial professional for 30 years. I understood money trails better than most attorneys. I knew how to trace assets, identify hidden accounts, and document financial malfeasance. And most importantly, I remembered the prenuptial agreement we had signed 28 years ago when I had more family money than he did, courtesy of my father's successful manufacturing business. The agreement he had insisted upon, ironically, to protect his future earnings from my family's wealth, contained a fidelity clause that would prove to be his undoing. My father, a shrewd businessman, had insisted on including it despite Gregory's protests. If he loves you, he won't have a problem with it, my father had said. And if he doesn't love you enough to stay faithful, you'll be protected. I had laughed it off at the time, certain Gregory and I would be different, that we would beat the odds. While Gregory plotted his escape with Cassandra, carefully planning his dramatic announcement and new life, I was building my case with equal care. I consulted with Philip Anderson, one of the best family law attorneys in Georgia, a woman my colleague had recommended after her own difficult divorce. I documented every hidden transfer with screenshots and bank statements. I gathered evidence of their affair through phone records, credit card statements showing hotels and restaurants, even hiring a private investigator for 1 week to establish a clear pattern. I prepared comprehensive divorce papers listing every asset, every account, every piece of property we owned. I timed everything perfectly, knowing Gregory would want to wait until after Amelia's graduation to avoid ruining her big day. What he didn't expect was that I would serve him the divorce papers the morning of the graduation, before his planned announcement, beating him to the punch while making it look like I was simply handing him a card or gift in public, but with the papers still safely filed in court records not yet accessible to him without proper legal channels. What Gregory didn't know was that I was always 3 steps ahead. I had learned long ago that success in finance required anticipating problems before they materialized. This was no different. I didn't return to the restaurant. Instead, I drove to our home, a spacious colonial in Augusta's historic district that we had purchased 15 years ago with my inheritance after my father passed away. The house that Gregory had already promised to Cassandra, according to text messages that he didn't realize I had seen, where she'd excitedly discussed redecorating their master bedroom and converting my home office into a yoga studio. I parked in the circular driveway and calmly entered what had been our shared space for over a decade. Everything looked the same as it had that morning when I'd left for the graduation. The family photos carefully arranged on the walls, documenting our life together from wedding day to recent holidays. The antique grandfather clock that had been my father's, its steady tick a comforting presence. The worn leather couch where Gregory and I had once dreamed of our future together, where we'd celebrated Amelia's first steps, where we'd held each other through my mother's death. Yet everything had changed. The familiar had become foreign, tainted by betrayal and lies. I went upstairs to the master bedroom and opened the large walk-in closet. Gregory's clothing was already packed in expensive leather suitcases, hidden behind winter coats in the back. Ready for his planned departure the following day, I smiled at his predictability. He had always been meticulous about his appearance and belongings, carefully curating his image, but careless about the important things like honesty, fidelity, and basic human decency. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages from friends at the restaurant, from Amelia, even from Gregory's sister Diana, who had flown in from Seattle for the graduation. Everyone wanted to know if I was okay, what had happened, why Gregory would do such a thing. I responded only to my daughter, knowing she needed reassurance most of all. I'm okay. This isn't your burden to carry. Enjoy your graduation day. We'll talk tonight. I love you always. I had protected Amelia from the truth for months, not wanting to overshadow her final semester with family drama or force her to choose sides during such an important time in her life. She would be angry that I hadn't told her, that I'd kept such a massive secret. But I knew she would understand eventually. Amelia had inherited my practicality and strategic thinking along with her father's charisma and charm, a powerful combination that had helped her graduate summa cum laude with a degree in marketing. 3 hours later, I heard Gregory's car in the driveway, the engine cutting off abruptly. The front door slammed open with enough force to rattle the paintings on the wall. "Bianca!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the house with an edge of panic I'd rarely heard. "Where are you?" I was sitting in the living room, calmly reviewing documents on my laptop, preparing for the next phase of my plan. I closed it as he stormed in, his face flushed with anger and exertion, his expensive suit rumpled, the envelope clutched in his hand like evidence of a crime. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, waving the papers at me. "You served me with divorce papers today, of all days, on our daughter's graduation day. I thought it aligned nicely with your plans." I replied calmly, my voice betraying none of the satisfaction I felt. "You wanted to start your new life. I'm simply helping facilitate the transition on the timeline you established." "You had no right to," he began, his voice rising. "I had every right," I interrupted, my voice remaining steady and controlled. "Just as you had every right to choose Cassandra. We all make choices, Gregory. Now we live with the consequences." "The prenup expired years ago," he said, his voice suddenly smug, as if he'd found a loophole that would save him. "Any lawyer will tell you that agreements like that don't hold up after this much time." I allowed myself a small smile, one I'd been saving for precisely this moment. "Actually, it didn't expire. Section 12 specifically states that the fidelity clause remains in effect for the duration of the marriage, with no expiration date. Your lawyer should have explained that to you when you consulted them about the divorce." "Oh wait." I paused meaningfully. "You didn't consult one before planning your grand announcement, did you? You were so confident, so certain I'd just accept your decision, and let you walk away with half of everything I'd worked so hard to build." The color drained from his face as reality began to sink in. The prenuptial agreement he had insisted upon 28 years ago to protect his potential future wealth from my family money would now cost him everything. The house, the vacation property in Savannah that we'd purchased as an investment, his portion of our retirement accounts that I'd carefully grown through conservative investments and strategic planning. His grand gesture at the restaurant had just become the most expensive announcement of his life. "You can't do this to me," Gregory said, collapsing onto the couch as if his legs could no longer support him. "After everything we've been through. We built this life together." I agreed, "and you chose to end it. Not in the way you planned, perhaps, but you made the choice to betray our marriage, to steal from our family, to humiliate me publicly." Gregory's phone buzzed persistently in his pocket, the vibration audible in the quiet room. He glanced at it reflexively, then ignored it, his jaw tightening. Cassandra, no doubt, wondering where he was and why he wasn't following through on their carefully orchestrated plan to begin their new life together. "You've always been calculating, Bianca," he said, trying a different approach, his voice taking on a wounded tone. "But this is cold even for you. What about our history? 28 years together means nothing to you." I studied him carefully, really looking at this man I had loved for nearly 3 decades. The man who had held my hand through 2 devastating miscarriages before we had Amelia, who had stayed up with me through long nights of grief. The man who had once surprised me with a romantic weekend trip to Charleston for our 10th anniversary, recreating our honeymoon. The man who had cried with joy when Amelia took her first steps. When had he changed? Or had he always been this person, capable of such selfishness and betrayal, and I had been too devoted, too busy playing the role of supportive wife, to notice the signs? Our history meant everything to me. I answered truthfully, feeling the weight of those years pressing down on me. "That's why your betrayal hurt so deeply." That's why I deserve better than being discarded publicly for a woman young enough to be our daughter." His expression softened momentarily, perhaps seeing an opening, a crack in my armor. "Then maybe we can fix this. I made a mistake, Bianca. People make mistakes. We can go to counseling, work through this together." "This wasn't a mistake, Gregory," I said firmly. "This was a calculated plan spanning more than a year. You systematically moved our money while lying to me about our financial situation. You looked at property with her while telling me we couldn't afford basic home repairs. You planned to announce our separation publicly specifically to humiliate me, to take away my power to respond. Those aren't mistakes. Those are choices." His face hardened again, the momentary vulnerability replaced by defensive anger. "You're exaggerating, making this sound worse than it is." "Am I?" I picked up my phone, opened the recording app, and played his own voice, captured from a conversation he'd had with Cassandra in our home office 3 weeks earlier. "After the graduation, I'll tell her it's over. A public setting is better. She won't make a scene in front of everyone. She's too controlled for that." Then Cassandra's voice, breathy and excited. "And she has no idea about the money you've been moving." Gregory's voice again, confident and dismissive. "None. Bianca trusts me completely. That's always been her weakness." The blood drained from his face as he listened to himself, his own words condemning him more effectively than anything I could say. "You recorded our conversations. That's illegal. You can't use that." "Not in Georgia when one party consents to the recording," I responded, having researched this thoroughly with Philip. "And it's not illegal when it's in your own home. I didn't record your private moments with Cassandra, Gregory. I'm not cruel or vindictive. Just the conversations about your plans to defraud me, to steal from our family while playing the victim." Gregory stood suddenly, agitated, running his hands through his hair. "I need to make some calls. I need to fix this." "Of course," I said evenly. "Your attorney might be a good starting point. I'll be staying at Diana's tonight, so you'll have the house to yourself to make whatever arrangements you need." "Diana's?" He sputtered, his face reddening. "My sister's house. She'll never let you stay there." I nodded, already anticipating his reaction. "Actually," she insisted, "Diana's quite upset with you, you see. She was the one who first spotted you and Cassandra together last Christmas at that gallery opening downtown. She didn't tell me immediately because she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Instead, she confronted you first, gave you a chance to end it, to come clean. You promised her it was nothing, that you would end whatever was happening. When she realized months later that you hadn't kept your word, that you were still seeing Cassandra and planning to leave me, she came to me with everything she knew." This was another blow he hadn't anticipated, and I watched it land with satisfaction. Diana and I had always been close, bonding over books and wine and honest conversation. But Gregory had never imagined his own sister would choose my side, would betray their blood relationship to support me. "Everyone's betraying me," he muttered, sinking back onto the couch. "My own sister. Ironic, isn't it?" I gathered my purse and a small overnight bag I had packed earlier and hidden in the hall closet. "You have until tomorrow evening to remove your personal belongings from the house. After that, the locks will be changed, and you'll need to arrange with my attorney for any additional items you need to retrieve." As I headed toward the door, Gregory called after me, desperation creeping into his voice. "What about Amelia? Have you thought about how this affects her, how this will damage her?" I paused, anger finally breaking through my carefully maintained calm facade. "Don't you dare use our daughter as a shield, Gregory. You certainly weren't thinking about her when you were planning your new beachfront life with Cassandra. You weren't thinking about her when you took money that could have helped with her student loans. You weren't thinking about her when you chose her graduation day as the perfect moment for your dramatic announcement." His phone buzzed again, more insistently this time. He looked at it and groaned audibly. "Problem?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Cassandra is at the apartment already. She's moved her things in, expecting me to be there." I couldn't help but smile at the delicious irony. "The apartment you put in both your names. The lease you signed last month for that renovated loft downtown." Gregory nodded, looking confused about where I was going with this. "You might want to check with the leasing office. That application was flagged for credit issues and never actually completed. The agent called our home phone last week to verify information. I handled it myself, explained there had been a mistake, that you weren't actually interested in leasing the property after all." I walked out the door, leaving Gregory to face the first of many consequences. His perfectly planned new life was unraveling faster than he could process, one carefully placed thread pulled at a time. Diana lived in a charming bungalow across town, close to the university where she taught American literature to undergraduates who often didn't appreciate her brilliance. When I arrived, pulling into her driveway lined with azalea bushes, she greeted me at the door with a fierce hug that nearly knocked the breath from my lungs. "I just heard from Amelia," she said, pulling me inside to her book-lined living room. "Are you okay? Really okay?" "I'm better than I expected," I admitted, following her to the kitchen where a bottle of good wine was already open, breathing on the counter. "I thought I'd feel worse, guilty maybe, but mostly I just feel relieved. I never thought Gregory would make such a spectacle," Diana said, pouring 2 generous glasses. "The restaurant, in front of everyone. He's completely lost his mind." "It was meant to humiliate me," I explained, accepting the glass gratefully. "A public rejection, carefully staged so I couldn't fight back without looking hysterical or unhinged. He wanted me to look like the wronged woman, pitiful and pathetic, while he rode off into the sunset with his younger girlfriend." Diana's face darkened with anger. "My brother always did have a flair for drama, but this is beyond anything I expected from him. I thought I knew him better than this." We settled in her sunroom, surrounded by potted plants and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves stuffed with worn paperbacks and academic texts. Diana had never married, preferring her independence and academic pursuits to the complications of partnership. Over the years, I had sometimes envied her freedom, her ability to make decisions based solely on her own desires and needs. "What did you put in that envelope that made him so upset?" she asked, curling up in her favorite armchair. I explained the contents in detail: the divorce filing, the evidence of his financial deception carefully documented, and most importantly, the prenuptial agreement that would leave him with far less than he had planned. "The prenup." Diana looked amused. "I remember when he insisted on it. Father had just given you that trust fund money, and Gregory was so worried about protecting his potential future earnings from your family wealth. The irony is absolutely delicious." My phone rang, interrupting our conversation. "Amelia." I took a deep breath before answering, preparing myself for her anger or tears. "Mom," she said immediately, her voice strained and tight. "I'm coming over to Aunt Diana's right now." "Honey, you don't have to do that. I know this is your day, and I don't want." "I'm already on my way," she interrupted firmly. "Dad is still at the restaurant, telling everyone who'll listen that you've lost your mind, that you've been planning this vindictive attack for months. He's saying horrible things about you, Mom, making you sound crazy and manipulative." Oh, of course he was. Gregory had always been skilled at rewriting narratives to cast himself as the victim, the misunderstood hero of his own story. "Let him talk," I said, trying to sound unconcerned. "The truth will become clear soon enough. People aren't as naive as he thinks." 20 minutes later, Amelia arrived. Still in her graduation dress but with her makeup smudged from crying, her hair disheveled from running her hands through it repeatedly. She fell into my arms the moment she crossed the threshold, collapsing like she used to as a child after a nightmare, seeking comfort and safety. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice muffled against my shoulder, tears soaking into my dress. "Why did you let me think everything was fine?" "I didn't want to ruin your final semester," I explained, stroking her hair the way I had when she was small. "You worked so hard for this day, for this achievement. You deserve to enjoy it without the weight of family drama crushing you." She pulled back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Well, Dad certainly took care of ruining it anyway." We moved to Diana's living room where, over the next hour, Amelia finally got the full story. How I had discovered the affair through financial discrepancies, the phone records, the private investigator's report, the deceptions about money, the hidden accounts, the plans Gregory and Cassandra had made for their future together using money he'd stolen from our family. "I knew something was off with Dad," Amelia admitted, accepting a glass of water from Diana. "He's been different for months. Distracted, always on his phone, defensive when I'd ask simple questions. But I never imagined anything like this. I thought maybe he was planning some kind of surprise for your anniversary or dealing with work stress. None of us want to see these things in people we love," Diana said gently, sitting beside her niece. "We make excuses, rationalize behavior, give them the benefit of the doubt because the alternative is too painful to consider." My phone buzzed with a text message from Philip Anderson, my attorney. The emergency filing had been approved by Judge Morrison. The accounts I had identified were frozen pending the divorce proceedings. Gregory now had limited access to funds, enough for basic living expenses, but not enough to follow through on the property purchases he had planned with Cassandra, or maintain the lifestyle he'd been promising her. I showed the message to Diana and Amelia. "Good," Amelia said firmly, her jaw set in a way that reminded me of my father. "He deserves every bit of this." My daughter's loyalty warmed me, but I wasn't naive about the complexity of the situation. He's still your father, sweetheart. Your relationship with him is separate from what's happening between us. I don't want you to feel like you have to choose sides or cut him out of your life because of this. Amelia shook her head vehemently. Maybe someday I'll be able to separate those things, but right now I can't even look at him. He hugged me this morning and told me how proud he was of me, looked me right in the eyes, all while planning to blow up our family just hours later. That's not the kind of person I want in my life right now. The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Diana went to answer it, returning moments later with a troubled expression that immediately put me on alert. It's Gregory, she said quietly. And he's not alone. Cassandra is with him. I steeled myself, taking a deep breath as Diana led them into the living room. Cassandra looked deeply uncomfortable, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, her eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape route. She was 37, not exactly a trophy wife despite what people might assume, but still 17 years my junior. She had shoulder-length blonde hair and the kind of confidence that comes from never having faced real hardship or consequences. Gregory, by contrast, looked furious. His earlier desperation and panic had hardened into righteous anger, the emotional transformation of someone who'd convinced himself he was the wronged party. Bianca, you need to stop this insanity right now, he demanded without preamble. Unfreeze the accounts immediately. We can discuss this like reasonable adults instead of playing these vindictive games. Amelia stood up abruptly, placing herself slightly in front of me in a protective gesture. Maybe you should have tried being reasonable before announcing to 50 people that you were leaving Mom for someone else. Gregory's eyes widened as if just noticing our daughter standing there. Amelia, sweetheart, this doesn't involve you. This is between your mother and me. Doesn't involve me, she echoed incredulously, her voice rising. You blew up our family on my graduation day, made a public spectacle that humiliated Mom and embarrassed me in front of everyone I know, and it doesn't involve me. Cassandra touched Gregory's arm tentatively. Greg, maybe we should go. This isn't the right time. He shook her off impatiently. No, I'm not leaving until Bianca agrees to be rational about this situation and stop punishing me. Diana folded her arms across her chest. My sister-in-law seems to be the only rational person in this entire scenario, Gregory. You're the one who created this mess through your own selfishness and deception. I remained seated, watching the drama unfold around me with a strange sense of detachment. For years, I had been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over conflicts and kept everyone happy, who sacrificed my own needs for family harmony. That exhausting role had finally been set down, and I had no intention of picking it up again. The accounts will remain frozen until the preliminary hearing, I said calmly, my voice cutting through the rising tension. That's scheduled for 3 days from now. The judge will determine appropriate asset division at that time based on the evidence presented. 3 days. Gregory sputtered. What am I supposed to do for 3 days without access to my money? You have your personal account, I reminded him. The one you've been funneling money into for the past year. According to my calculations, there should be approximately $38,000 in it. That should be more than sufficient for your immediate needs. Cassandra's head whipped toward Gregory with surprising speed. You have a separate account with $38,000 in it. You told me we needed to be careful about money, that things were tight. An interesting dynamic was emerging, and I watched with fascination. Clearly, Gregory hadn't been entirely forthcoming with Cassandra either about their financial situation or his resources. Gregory ignored her question entirely. This is vindictive, Bianca. This isn't like you. The woman I married wouldn't stoop to this level of pettiness. Perhaps you never really knew me, I replied calmly. Just as I apparently never really knew you. Or at least never knew what you were capable of when it served your interests. Amelia turned to face Cassandra directly. Did you know he was going to announce it like that, at my graduation celebration in front of everyone? Cassandra had the decency to look ashamed, her cheeks flushing. I thought he was going to talk to your mother privately first. The public announcement today was unexpected for me too. Gregory shot her a betrayed look, as if she'd just revealed classified information. Cracks were already forming in their supposedly united front. I think you both should leave now, Diana said firmly, moving toward the door. You've upset Amelia enough for one day, and you're not welcome in my home behaving like this. Amelia, Gregory pleaded, his voice taking on a wheedling tone. You understand that relationships change, don't you? Sometimes people grow apart. It doesn't mean I don't love you or your mother in my own way. My daughter's face hardened in a way I had never seen before, her expression cold and unforgiving. What I understand is that you're a coward who couldn't even give Mom the dignity of a private conversation. What I understand is that you were stealing from our family, while I was working 2 jobs to help pay for my textbooks and living expenses, because you told me money was tight, and you couldn't help as much as you wanted to. Gregory paled visibly. That's not how it was, sweetheart. It's exactly how it was. Amelia cut him off sharply. Please leave, Dad. I can't look at you right now without feeling sick. The silence that followed was deafening, heavy with unspoken recriminations and broken trust. Finally, Gregory turned to go, his shoulders slumped in defeat, with Cassandra trailing behind him uncertainly. At the door, he paused and looked back at me one last time. This isn't over, Bianca. I'll fight you on every single point of this divorce. I met his gaze steadily, unflinching. You're welcome to try, Gregory, but you should know that I've been preparing for this much longer than you have. After they left, Amelia collapsed next to me on the sofa, fresh tears streaming down her face. I've never talked to Dad like that before. I've never stood up to him about anything. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. Sometimes standing up for what's right is painful, especially when it means confronting people we love. But it's also necessary. Deanna brought us fresh glasses of wine, raising hers in a toast. To new beginnings and standing up for yourself. Indeed, I thought, clinking my glass against theirs. This ending was just the beginning of something new, something I was building for myself rather than for everyone else. The preliminary hearing took place in a small, wood-paneled courtroom on a rainy Tuesday morning. I arrived with Philip, who carried a briefcase full of meticulously organized evidence, while Gregory came with a lawyer he had hastily retained. The attorney was a young associate from a firm that specialized in corporate law rather than family matters, another consequence of Gregory's rushed and poorly planned response. The judge, an older woman named Patricia Morrison with sharp eyes and silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, had a reputation for having no patience for dramatics or unprepared attorneys. She reviewed the prenuptial agreement carefully, taking her time with each page while we sat in silence. This document appears to be in order, she finally said, looking over her reading glasses at Gregory's attorney. Do you contest its validity on any grounds? The young lawyer cleared his throat nervously. Your Honor, we believe the agreement has effectively expired due to the substantial length of time that has passed since it was signed. 28 years is. Section 18 clearly states that the duration is for the term of the marriage plus any legal proceedings resulting from its dissolution. Judge Morrison read aloud, her voice brooking no argument. There is no expiration date indicated anywhere in this document. Do you have precedent suggesting that prenuptial agreements automatically expire after a certain period if no such expiration is specified? Gregory leaned forward to whisper urgently to his lawyer, who looked increasingly uncomfortable with each passing moment. Furthermore, the judge continued, shuffling through the papers before her, the evidence of systematic fund transfers appears to clearly violate the financial disclosure requirements outlined in Section 23 of this agreement. Mr. Caldwell was obligated to inform his spouse of any separate accounts containing marital assets. She looked up at both parties. I am ruling to maintain the freeze on all joint accounts pending full financial discovery, which will take approximately 30 days. Caldwell's personal account will remain accessible to him for living expenses. The family home will remain in Mrs. Caldwell's sole possession during these proceedings, as explicitly stipulated in the prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause, Section 15. Gregory's face flushed dark red with humiliation and anger. This is outrageous, he muttered, just loud enough for me to hear across the small courtroom. Judge Morrison fixed him with a stern look that could have frozen water. Mr. Caldwell, I strongly suggest you review the agreement you signed more carefully before making any more statements in my courtroom. This court will reconvene in 30 days for the full hearing after discovery is complete. In the meantime, both parties are ordered to provide complete financial documentation to opposing counsel. As we left the courtroom, Gregory caught up to me in the marble hallway, his footsteps echoing in the high, ceilinged space. Bianca, please. We need to talk about this reasonably, without all these lawyers and judges involved. 28 years together has to count for something. It counted for everything? I replied, pausing to face him directly. Until you decided it didn't. Until you decided that Cassandra and a beachfront fantasy were worth more than the life we'd built together. I walked away, leaving him standing alone in the courthouse corridor, the weight of his choices finally beginning to sink in. I could feel his eyes on my back as I left, but I didn't turn around. That chapter of my life was closing, and I had no interest in prolonging the ending. Word spread quickly through our social circle, traveling through the interconnected web of friendships and acquaintances we'd cultivated over nearly 3 decades. Friends called daily, some offering genuine support, others clearly seeking gossip to share at their own dinner parties. I maintained a dignified silence about the specific details, simply saying, "Gregory and I are separating." These things happen in long marriages. Meanwhile, Gregory's carefully constructed facade was crumbling in spectacular fashion. The image he had cultivated over the years, successful businessman, devoted family man, pillar of the community, was tarnished beyond repair. People who had respected him now whispered behind his back at social gatherings he was no longer invited to. Business associates began to distance themselves, concerned about his judgment and character. The financial freeze meant he couldn't follow through on the elaborate promises he'd made to Cassandra. The beachfront property they had been planning to purchase together in an exclusive gated community fell through when he couldn't produce the down payment. The luxury car he had put a deposit on, a sleek BMW convertible that Cassandra had apparently picked out herself, had to be cancelled. The lavish lifestyle he'd promised was evaporating like morning mist. 2 weeks after the preliminary hearing, Diana called me while I was reviewing potential office spaces for the business I was finally ready to start. Her voice was tinged with amusement that she wasn't even trying to hide. "Have you heard the latest news?" she asked without preamble. "About Gregory. I assume there's more drama." Cassandra moved out of his apartment. "Apparently it happened 3 days ago, but word just reached me through the faculty gossip network. Already." I wasn't entirely surprised, but the speed was impressive even by my cynical standards. That didn't take long. Apparently, she discovered that Gregory's business isn't doing nearly as well as he'd claimed. Diana explained, clearly relishing the story. "The substantial savings he talked about having don't actually exist. Most of that $38,000 in his personal account has already been spent on legal fees." She told her friend Jennifer, who teaches in my department, that she didn't sign up to date a man with serious financial problems and uncertain prospects. Jennifer said Cassandra used the word misrepresented, which is rather ironic given the circumstances. I couldn't help but laugh, the sound surprising me with its genuine amusement. Hay always was exceptionally good at creating illusions and selling people on dreams rather than reality. Jennifer also mentioned that Cassandra is apparently already seeing someone new, a real estate developer from Savannah with actual, verifiable money. She moves fast when things don't work out the way she planned. The schadenfreude was perhaps unworthy of me, but I allowed myself to enjoy it nonetheless. Gregory had thrown away a marriage, devastated his daughter, and destroyed his reputation for a relationship that had lasted barely 2 weeks after going public. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding my life with intention and purpose. The financial security I had always maintained separately from our joint accounts, money Gregory hadn't even known about that I'd saved over years of careful planning, gave me freedom he hadn't anticipated. I rented a small but well-appointed office space in a renovated building downtown, with large windows that let in abundant natural light and exposed brick walls that gave it character. I began setting up the financial consultancy I had dreamed about for years, creating a business plan, designing a website, reaching out to professional contacts. My first clients were 2 women going through divorces of their own, referred to me by Philip, who'd been impressed with how thoroughly I'd documented my own financial situation. Word of mouth brought more clients quickly, women who needed help understanding complex financial documents, who were afraid of being taken advantage of, who wanted to secure their futures. I specialized in helping women understand their finances during major life transitions, divorces, widowhood, career changes, retirement planning. The work was immediately fulfilling in a way my corporate job had never been. At Truvanta, I'd been managing other people's money in service of corporate profits. Now I was helping real people, individuals who genuinely needed guidance and support, protect themselves and build better futures. Amelia, who had accepted a position with an innovative marketing firm in Charleston, called me regularly to check in and hear updates about the business. "I'm so proud of you, Mom," she told me one evening about 3 weeks after her graduation. "You're not just getting revenge on Dad. You're actually helping people during their worst moments, turning your own pain into something constructive." "I'm just doing what I wish someone had done for me earlier," I replied, looking around my new office with satisfaction. Preparing women for whatever might come, giving them the knowledge and tools to protect themselves. Too many women are kept in the dark about family finances, left vulnerable because they trust their partners completely. "Like you trusted Dad," Amelia said quietly. "Like I trusted your father," I agreed. "But that doesn't mean trust is wrong. it means we need to verify to stay informed, to maintain our own financial independence even in committed relationships. Being needed for my expertise rather than my caregiving abilities was a novel and deeply empowering experience. My clients didn't want me to sacrifice myself or put their needs above my own. They wanted my knowledge, my strategic thinking, my ability to see patterns and anticipate problems. They paid me for my brain rather than my emotional labor, and the difference was transformative. The final divorce hearing fell on what would have been our 29th wedding anniversary, a fitting end to a chapter of my life that had lasted nearly 3 decades. I had noticed the date when Philip scheduled it, had considered asking for a different day, but ultimately decided the symbolism was appropriate. One door closing, another opening, both on the same date. Gregory arrived at the courthouse looking haggard and diminished. I later learned from Diana that his furniture business was struggling significantly without my financial support and guidance. He'd always been better at the creative aspects than the practical business management, and it showed. Cassandra was long gone, already engaged to the real estate developer according to the social media posts that Amelia had reluctantly shown me. Most of our mutual friends had distanced themselves from Gregory after learning the full story of his systematic deception, the lies about money, the calculated public humiliation he'd attempted. The hearing itself was almost anticlimactic after the drama that had preceded it. Judge Morrison reviewed all the financial discovery documents, examined the evidence of Gregory's hidden accounts and transfers, and upheld the prenuptial agreement in its entirety without hesitation or debate. Gregory left with his personal possessions, his struggling business, and the money remaining in his private account, which after paying his attorneys substantial fees was barely enough to secure a small one-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town. I retained our home, my retirement accounts that I'd carefully built over decades, and 70% of our joint investments, exactly as the prenuptial agreement stipulated in cases of proven infidelity. The justice was poetic in a way I couldn't have scripted better myself. The very document Gregory had insisted upon to protect himself, signed when he was worried about my family money, had become his downfall. His own paranoia and selfishness had planted the seeds of his destruction 28 years earlier. As we left the courtroom for the final time, Gregory approached me in the hallway, looking smaller somehow, as if the proceedings had physically diminished him. "I made a terrible mistake, Bianca," he said quietly, without the anger or defensiveness that had characterized our previous interactions. "Is there any chance, any possibility that we could?" "No," I interrupted, gentle but absolutely firm. "That door is closed, Gregory. It closed the moment you decided to betray everything we'd built together. It closed when you chose to humiliate me publicly. It closed when you stole from our family while our daughter worked multiple jobs because you told her we couldn't help more." "I understand," he replied, and for once, I believed he actually did. The consequences had finally penetrated his self-deception. "I hope you find happiness, Bianca. Despite everything, I do mean that. You deserve it." It was perhaps the first completely honest thing he had said to me in years, and I recognized the truth in it. "Thank you," I said simply. "I hope you figure out what you really want from life, Gregory. I hope you learn to be honest with yourself and others." We parted ways in the courthouse parking lot, him walking toward a modest sedan that had replaced his luxury car, me heading toward my own vehicle with my head high and my future stretching before me full of possibility. 6 months later, my consultancy, Caldwell Financial Transitions, was thriving beyond my initial projections. I had moved from the small downtown office to a larger space in a renovated Victorian house with room for my growing team. I had hired 2 associates, both women with finance backgrounds who shared my passion for helping other women secure their financial futures. Rachel, a former banker in her 40s who'd gone through her own difficult divorce, handled complex asset division cases. Maya, a recent MBA graduate with a specialty in retirement planning, worked with older clients preparing for their post-career years. I specialized in helping women secure their financial futures, particularly through major life changes, divorces, certainly, but also widowhood, career transitions, inheritance management, and retirement planning. We offered workshops on financial literacy, one-on-one consulting, and ongoing support for clients who wanted someone in their corner long-term. The work was deeply satisfying in ways I hadn't anticipated. I met with women who were terrified of their financial situations, who had been kept in the dark about family finances for entire marriages, who didn't even know how to access their own bank accounts. I watched them transform over months of working together, growing more confident, more knowledgeable, more empowered to make their own decisions. One client, Patricia, a woman in her late 60s whose husband had recently passed away, cried in my office when she realized she had far more assets than she'd believed possible. "Ha always told me we were barely getting by," she said, wiping her eyes. "But you've shown me we were actually quite comfortable. I've been rationing groceries and skipping medications, and all this time there was money available. I just didn't know how to find it. Those moments made every difficult day worthwhile, every hour of studying case law and financial regulations, every sacrifice I'd made to build something meaningful from the ruins of my marriage." Amelia visited often from Charleston, making the drive on weekends to spend time with me and see the business growing. She'd started dating someone, a graphic designer named Marcus, who treated her with respect and genuine affection. She was thriving in her marketing position, already earning promotions and recognition for her innovative campaigns. "You know what's ironic?" she said during one visit, sitting in my office after hours while I finished paperwork. "If Dad had just been honest from the beginning, if he'd asked for a divorce straightforwardly and divided things fairly, he might have kept half of everything. He'd be in a much better financial position than he is now." "Sometimes people can't see beyond what they want in the immediate moment," I replied, signing off on a client contract. "They make decisions based on desire rather than wisdom, on fantasy rather than reality. Your father wanted the thrill of the affair, the drama of the grand gesture, the illusion of starting over without consequences. He couldn't envision a future where his choices would actually cost him." "Have you seen him at all?" Amelia asked carefully. She'd been slowly rebuilding her relationship with Gregory, meeting him occasionally for lunch, though their relationship remained strained. "No, and I don't plan to. We have nothing to say to each other anymore. That part of my life is finished." She nodded, understanding. "He asks about you sometimes. Not in a creepy way, just asking if you're okay, if the business is doing well. I think he's genuinely glad you're happy, even though he lost everything in the process. I hope he is finding his own path," I said honestly. "Not for his sake, but because you deserve to have a father who's figured himself out, who's learned from his mistakes." As the sun set through my office windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors, I reflected on how completely my life had transformed. The woman who had walked out of that restaurant 6 months ago, maintaining her composure while her world shattered publicly, had discovered something unexpected in the wreckage. I had found not just revenge, though there had certainly been satisfaction in watching Gregory face consequences for his actions. I had found not just survival, though I'd definitely proven my resilience. I had found reinvention, rebirth, a second chance to become the person I'd always had the potential to be, but had never prioritized. The envelope I had handed Gregory at the restaurant hadn't just been an escape plan or a weapon. It had been the key to a door I never knew existed. Behind that door, I'd found a version of myself that was stronger, more independent, more purposeful than the woman who defined herself primarily through relationships to others. Wife, mother, supporter, caregiver. Those roles had been real and important, but they'd never been the entirety of who I was. Now I was Bianca Caldwell, business owner, financial consultant, mentor to women rebuilding their lives. I was someone who helped others find their strength during their darkest moments. I was someone who had transformed personal pain into professional purpose. In securing my financial future through that carefully planned confrontation and divorce, I had also reclaimed something far more valuable than money or property. I had reclaimed myself, the dreams I'd deferred, the ambitions I'd set aside, the identity I'd allowed to be subsumed by the needs and wants of others. The restaurant where Gregory had made his announcement had become something of a local legend, the site of what people called the graduation day divorce. I'd heard from friends that servers still occasionally mentioned that day when a woman walked out with head held high after her husband announced he was leaving her. It had become a story people told, though most didn't know the full truth of what had really happened. Let them tell their stories, I thought. Let Gregory be remembered as the man who tried to publicly humiliate his wife and ended up humiliating himself instead. Let me be remembered as the woman who refused to play the role everyone expected, who turned betrayal into opportunity, who built something meaningful from the ashes of a broken marriage. As I locked up my office that evening and walked to my car under a sky painted with sunset colors, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete contentment with my own company, satisfaction with my own choices, excitement for a future I was building entirely on my own terms. The envelope had contained divorce papers, financial evidence, legal documentation. But metaphorically, it had contained something else entirely: my declaration of independence, my refusal to accept the narrative Gregory had tried to write, my commitment to building a life based on my own values and dreams rather than someone else's. Revenge had been sweet, certainly. Watching Gregory face the consequences of his actions, seeing his carefully planned new life collapse, knowing that his own selfishness had engineered his downfall, all of that had provided satisfaction. But reinvention had been sweeter still. Building a business that mattered, helping women who desperately needed support, becoming someone who was valued for her mind and expertise rather than her willingness to sacrifice. That was the real victory. As I drove home through Augusta's tree-lined streets, passing the restaurant where it had all publicly ended, I allowed myself a small smile. Gregory had wanted to start a new life without me. He'd gotten his wish, though not in any way he'd anticipated. And I had gotten mine too, a new life without him, built on a foundation of my own strength, filled with purpose and possibility, defined by my choices rather than his betrayals. The ending he'd planned had become my beginning, and what a beginning it was.